So guys, the last step of our cheese making, this is what I showed you before. This has been sitting on my counter for 2 days. This is the Rejuvelac with the nut paste, and it's smelling cheesy. So all I'm going to put into this is some miso. I have my miso paste. This is coming to an end, and I don't have onion powder. I'm going to use some onion flakes. You don't need to do any of this except for some salt, because if you go to the store to buy cheese and you look, all you're going to see is the culture. Our culture is the quinoa, the Rejuvelac from the quinoa. That's your culture. And milk. This is all the ingredients they have on cheese, and salt. So, but what I do with my nut cheese, I add a little bit of miso. So I'm going to add about this much for this quantity here. And this is very salty, the miso, so you wouldn't have to add much salt to this. And I'm going to add some onion flakes. I would do about a teaspoon, because this has to sit again for another 2 or 3 days. I like to leave it for another 5 days, 2 days out on my counter, and then I put it in my refrigerator for another 3 days to do some more curing. So I'm going to mix this in, the miso paste, and let me add some salt. I'm not going to add a lot of salt, about a half a teaspoon. You know why? Because while your cheese is curing, this is my cheesecloth here in my bowl. This is a mold that I use. I like this bowl. It's a nice round bowl as a mold. You have to put salt on the cheesecloth during the time that you're curing the cheese. So you don't want to put too much salt in this here, because in this mixture, because your cheese is going to be too salty. But you have to sprinkle a little bit of cheese on your, a little bit of salt on your mold with your cheese mixture, to prevent the bad guys from growing, to prevent mold, etc. So this is incorporated here. So I'm going to take my bowl with my cheesecloth. I'm going to pour this in. I like to get everything in there. Waste not, want not. This is from my mother. This is what she always said, waste not, want not. So I get everything in here. And then I tie this up with a string. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this. I don't know, maybe I cut this so I can tie this, not using the string. I don't want to waste this. So I'm going to cut this here, and then I'm going to tie this with a string. See, so this is getting my cheese in the shape that I want, that round shape. So you get some string. This is all cotton, and you tie it like this. Tie it tight. I'm gonna cut this off. Tie this around, tie it twice. You see, this is already starting to, you see, if you look, it's already starting to drip. So this is the thing, the water has to get out of your cheese mixture and get hard. So I like to leave this for at least another 5 days, 2 days on the counter and 3 days in my refrigerator. So I'm sprinkling some sea salt on this. This is to prevent mold. Just a little bit, not a lot, because you don't want it too salty. And then what I do is I put this in a strainer because the water has to come out of it. So I put this in the strainer like this, and I leave it on the counter for 2 days, and the water is going to come out of it. Your cheese is going to start getting harder and harder. So at the end of 5 days, you can slice the cheese. Now it's very soft, but in 5 days, after all the water has evaporated and dripped out, it's going to get harder, and then you have your cheese. So your cheese is going to look like this, and then you will be able to slice it. So this is the last step, and just add a little bit of salt, not too much, because then your cheese is going to be too salty. Just a little bit to prevent the mold from growing on your cheese when it's sitting outside on your counter. So again, I do it for 2 days. It depends on where you are with humidity, weather conditions. This might do maybe in 3 days. 1 day on the counter, 2 days in the refrigerator, 2 days on the counter, 1 day in the refrigerator. Just check your cheese and see how it feels, and you make the decision. I'm just giving you the basics and a guide, but you have to use your common sense, and you're gonna do this depending on where you live and the weather conditions. So I hope you make this cheese. This is what it should be, instead of just processing some Brazil nut and calling it cheese. It's nut piece, it's not cheese. This is cheese. So I hope you make this, and thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care, guys.